Prison for me, when I first initially started to go to jail, I was happy going to prison. I've spent around 8.5 years of my life in prison. I was involved in gangs from an early age, from around about the age of 13. What came with that lifestyle was dealing drugs, violence. Into my later years, that then started to obviously catch up on me, which as a result put me inside of prison for most of my teenage and adult life.
So I started working here 17 years ago. I came here as a volunteer. Whilst volunteering here, I realised the huge impact that staff have when families are coming into the centre before they go into the prison, that we could help them by being a friendly face, somebody to talk to, making them a cup of tea, just to try and ease some of that anxiety. I loved it so much, and when I realised what a difference I was making just by being here, I wanted to continue, and here I still am today.
So I've been in the prison service for 34 years, and I first started when I was 17 years old, and I started working in some offices, doing some background work that all of our prisons have. And after about 7 years, I decided to become a prison officer, and then I've worked my way up through various different grades in the prison to eventually being a governing governor, which I am now, and this is the second prison that I've governed.
So I have some questions here that you'd like me to answer, so I'll move to question one. What do you do for fun in prison? So for fun in prison, I think fun in prison is you have a lot of banter between you and other inmates, just like you would if you was outside with your friends in a crowd, or you're on the park with your friends, or you're in a pub, for example. As adults, you'd have banter and you'd have a laugh and a joke between one another. And I think the thing about that is you can quite easily go quite deep within yourself with a mass load of depression and feel so upset. So passing the time with that and not actually being too involved with the prison system by letting it get you down, you have to continue how you would do outside with the differences that you're just locked up. So you have to have as much fun as you can. Involve yourself into the activities that you can get yourself involved in. Games of pool. You can have games of pool, which is fun. Have games of table tennis and competitions that they run, and you can be happy that you've just basically won against your next door neighbor who you know is going to have the ump, but now you haven't got the ump because you've just won. And there's never no quarrels between who's won and who's lost, and then an argument would occur. And it's just all about having a bit of fun. And then in your cells, you do have inmates that you do have a cell with. You've got bunk beds, and you pass the time within your cell having a bit of fun, talking and reminiscing about your past and stories, and having conversations with them, getting to know them a little bit, and having a laugh and a joke at the same time with them. So again, I think it's just about trying to keep yourself as much out of the depression state that actually you could get yourself into, and just go with the flow and just work with the system, and the system will work with you. What was a typical day like for you in prison? So in prison, there's a routine. There's a routine that most people will follow. You will get your cell door opened at around about 20 to 8 in the morning. Anything that you need to do at that time that's the time to do it. So you do get toilet paper that's supplied to you by the officers. So you go to the office and you request your toilet paper. You'll need to have a shave sometimes. So you'll ask the officers for a razor. That razor you must hand back at all times, because they know that you've got that razor, and the razor can cause significant harm to somebody. So you'll have to give that razor back. If you need any paper, any envelopes for prison issue letters, you request that at that point in time. You will get that from the office as well. If you need to have a shower, which most of us do, most of us will go and have a shower first thing in the morning, because there's not many opportunities for you actually to have one. So then you'll have your shower. And then what will happen from there, around about 8:30, At 8:30 in the morning, you'll then start to get yourself ready for work if you've got a job. If you're in the education department or if you're in the workshop department, you will then queue up downstairs at the main gate, and that gate will then take you out, and you will all go together at the same time. Officers with you at all times, from the door all the way until you get into the education block.
They stop for lunch and they go back to work in the afternoon, and then they come back to where they live for their tea, and then they can spend time in the evenings with other people that they know, playing cards, playing games, going to the gym, doing a vast array of activities.
Tea time, you'll go down, you'll get the food that you've picked from your menu, and you will go upstairs. Your door will be left open then, and you will eat your food, and you are free to congregate or walk around the wing at that time, which we call association. And you will then be closed at around about between 7 and 7:30 in the evening, which therefore everybody's then winding down, and your door is closed until for the rest of the night until the morning. And that's usually what a day in prison would look like.
Are prisoners happy? This is quite a difficult question because, like everybody, people feel happiness at different times throughout the day. So prisoners can be happy, just like you can be happy. You know, sometimes they'd be really happy receiving a letter or an email from you, or maybe they've just had a visit from you. So they'd go back to the wing and talk about how that visit went with some of their friends that they've made on the wing, and everybody would share that happiness.
Prison for me, when I first initially started to go to jail, I was happy going to prison, which might sound strange to some people, but I didn't really have anything on the outside for me to be happy outside. I was homeless for most of my teenage years. I didn't really have a family. And when I got sent to prison, I had a roof over my head. I had 3 meals a day. I made friends whilst I was inside. I got to go to the gym on a regular basis. And it was just a form of being comfortable for me, being in the environment. It wasn't anything that I struggled with in my teenage years. But the more the years had gone on for me being in prison, when I got into adult years and I had a family of my own, I wasn't as happy as I was when I was a teenager, because now I've had responsibilities and I have my own children, and having children coming up to see me on a visit was quite upsetting when it was time for them to go, both for myself and for the children that was actually leaving me behind. So that was quite depressing, and it makes you think about things in a different way whilst you're locked in your cell and reflecting of how your day's gone, or how often you actually get to speak to your family on the phones or by letter. So towards the end of my sentence, no, I wouldn't say that I was happy, but at the beginnings of my sentence in my early years, yeah.
Why can't I call my dad anytime I like? The reason for that is we've got lots of men in prison and much fewer phones, and we have to control who uses the phones and when. So we allow men to come out and use the phone at predetermined times, so we don't end up with lots of big queues of men trying to use the phone, all trying to use the phone at peak times of the day. But what we do have at Chelmsford is phones in cells. So the guys that are here can make family calls at much more frequent times to speak to you when it's bedtime, or call at weekends. A lot more flexible, but it's not easy for you to just ring in, because some of the men will be busy at work, they'll be doing other activities. So we make sure that it's structured so that the men know when they can make their phone calls home.
What will happen when I visit a prison? So all prisons are different. When you come to this prison, you would come into the visit centre. You'd be approached by a member of staff that would ask you who you were here to see. We'd give you a declaration form that an adult would fill in. We would then check the ID of all the visitors against the declaration form. You would then go into the prison, you'd go through a search area, and the officers would tell you where you needed to go. Once you'd gone through this part of the prison, you would have a drugs dog come and sniff around you before you go actually up into the visits hall.
How do you prepare yourself before a visit? So, visits. So for me, I was quite friendly with the clothing stores people. Now, on some visits, you can actually wear your own clothes. But in some prison, you have to wear prison issue clothes. So like a blue and white prison stripy shirt and some dark blue jeans. And if you're in with the clothing, the clothing exchange, you can get brand spanking new stuff. So we always want to look smart when we're going out on visits to see our family, or you might have a girlfriend or a wife that you go out and see, and with your children, you just want to look really, really smart. So you can speak to them and you can say, look, do me a favor, mate. I've got a good visit. I've got all my family coming up and I want to look really smart. And they'll bang you a brand new pair of jeans and a new shirt. So you'll make sure that that's all ironed, and you'll make sure that, because there's a barber that's on the wing, and you pay them a couple of packets of biscuits, for example, and they'll cut your hair for you to make yourself look really, really fresh. And you'll get your hair gel. You do all your hair in the mirror. And some of them are makeshift mirrors because you can't have proper mirrors. Some of them are plastic, and when you're looking into it, you don't actually get the proper view of yourself that you would get in a normal mirror, but you make do with what you've got. When it comes to the time, like you're banged up anyway, because it's always usually after lunch that you'll have a visit. So you won't sleep. You'll be really excited for people to come and see you, and you'll be sitting there and you'll be watching the TV and just looking, hoping for the time to pass down really, really quickly. The minute that door goes, you start getting butterflies and you're all excited and you're thinking, oh yeah, this is great. I'm going to get to see my family. And you'll walk down. The officers will take you over to the visiting room. They will then sit you into a chair, and every time the door will go, then you've got other prisoners that are also there in the same location as you, and everybody else is waiting for their family or friends to come and see them for a visit. And the minute that door opens and you see your family member, it just gives you that, you just feel so happy. You have a big smile on your face. At that point, you're allowed to give them a quick hug. When they walk up to you, you give them a nice hug, but then you must sit back down in the chair, and there's no more touching going on from them. So the preparations really is just around about excitement and just making sure that you're looking fresh and at your best, the best that you can look whilst you're inside anyway.
Why are people in prison? Keep people in the community safe. People commit offences, people commit crimes. Some are more serious than others. And it's down to the courts to send men to prison if they think there's going to be a risk if they stay outside of prison. And by risk, I mean people could be in danger, or whoever's committed that crime might continue to commit more crime until they get their crime heard at court. So it's important to bear that in mind when people come to prison. It's about public safety and to stop them from committing further crimes whilst they're outside.
Is prison a dangerous place? Prison can be a dangerous place. You have different types of inmates that are inside prison. You've got prisoners that deal with severe mental health. You've got prisoners that do commit violent offences on a regular occurrence. But I think if people were to go into prison and just mind their own business and just do their time and go home, then they shouldn't really come across any violence, as to say. Not getting involved in anything that doesn't concern them on the wings and the landings, which sometimes people do tend to do, just out of the act of boredom, really, and wanting to be accepted as well on the wing, because it can be a scary place for some people that's to go in here, especially for the first time.
Most people are safe in prisons, and if people behave themselves in prisons and they go to work every day and they do all that's required of them, then largely people will be safe. Where it becomes unsafe is when people start to borrow things from other people, or they start to use drugs in prison, or they start to take things from other prisoners, or quite often when there's arguments that have occurred outside of prison that then follows themselves into prison by other people that they know. But I have a very capable team of officers that work in my safety team that work very hard to keep everybody safe in prison. But ultimately, if those that are in prison work hard, do all that's required of them, then they'll be safe.
Can I tell my friends? I personally would recommend that you do tell your friends. I think it's important that everybody has a good support network around them. It can be friends, it can be family, but I think to keep everything to yourself isn't particularly healthy for anybody. So your friends may find out that your dad may be in prison and that you haven't told them, so they might be keeping that secret from you, and that can have a detrimental effect on your relationship. I also think it is important that you share how you feel with everything in life.
My son was 5 when I went to prison, and my daughter was about 3, I think she were. And to be honest with you, what I did and what we did as a family, we tried to keep it a secret, as to say, of exactly where I were. Now, where I look at it wrongfully, basically told them that Dad was at work. So they thought I was working away. And I was away for a long time at that point, because the sentence that I'd received at that point was about 3 years. So they was told by other friends, for example, at school, there was adults that knew that I was in prison, and they were speaking quite highly in front of their children, and it led their children to then go back to school by talking about myself in the playgrounds, which then my children overheard, which, disheartened my son by knowing exactly where his dad actually is. His dad's in prison, and it was quite upsetting for him, knowing that that's where I were. Recently, really, that I've been doing things with my son later on in the life, by being open and honest with him and talking to him about it, and actually speaking to him about how that made him feel as a child, knowing that his dad was in prison. So now he's getting the support, being able to get this off his chest, rather than he did do when he was 5 years old.
Does prison help people like my dad? That's a tricky question, really, because it depends what Dad is like. And if Dad wants to better himself in prison, then there are lots of opportunities for him to do so. He can engage in activities such as education, and he can learn new skills, or he can engage in activities that's more practical, such as painting and decorating, carpentry, plumbing, those kind of skills. Or sometimes men just want to work in the kitchens, helping us prepare the food, because we have an awful lot of food we have to prepare every day, 750 meals, 3 times a day, every single day of the year. So I can't employ just staff to do that. I need men such as Dad to help me do that. Lots of cleaning goes on. And also lots of dads help other dads to better themselves in prison as well. So if Dad wants to better himself and do more and learn more, then there are certainly opportunities there for Dad to do so.
Is prison like it is on the TV? Sometimes. It can sometimes be like that. I think, to be fair, when it comes to TV do a lot of research, and they do dramatize a lot of stuff that they put out on the TV. When you're seeing stuff around the landings, when there's landings and there's prisoners walking around the landings, or there's prisoners going into each other's cells, yeah, that's very realistic, and that does happen. If there's fights, that does happen also. Doesn't happen that often, depending on what wing you're on, but there is fights that do happen, but not a regular occurrence. Some wings are quieter than others. Drugs that are in prison, yes, there is quite a lot of drugs in the prison system. So where you see this types of stuff on the TV, yes, that is possibly true as well. My advice to that would be to be speaking with your parents yourselves. They will be able to tell you the whole ins and outs of exactly what goes on in a day-to-day routine within the jail system.
What will happen after prison? A number of things will happen after prison, and that is where people that leave prison engage with what we call the probation service. And the probation service are here to help and support people when they get released. If you're being released from prison and there isn't any support when you get out, that's very difficult. So the probation service are there to help with accommodation, to help with getting you a job upon release, and to make sure they check in with you regularly to make sure that you're keeping away from crime, that you're maintaining good relationships with people outside. And if people outside of prison find things difficult, they've got someone to go to for help and support. And there are lots of organisations, lots of charities that are available for people when they get released to give them support in terms of getting into work, helping them with money, getting them somewhere to live, helping them get a job, and just make sure that they keep away from a life of crime, which is ultimately what we're trying to achieve.
Is visiting a prison scary? This is a very individual thing. Some people come to the prison and they may be feeling very anxious and very scared. If they talk to us about it, we would explain to them how the visit process works, what the search may look like to them, where they're going, how many stairs they have to go up, that kind of thing. So it depends on really what you would mean by scared. Actually going into the visits hall, there's a lot of officers up there. The person you're seeing would be so happy to see you, I'm sure. It doesn't have to be a scary environment. However, I do feel that everybody come to the prison feels anxious, however old they are.
What's the best way to help your dad in prison? the best way to help your dad in prison would be to stay in contact and just continually show them love and support. And if you can read and write, write letters, or if you can't read and write, get an adult, or if teachers at school is aware that you've got a family member in prison, asking a teacher to help you write a letter to your dad in jail. And having a letter in prison from a loved one is a nice thing. Prisoners look forward to mail coming through the door. When people come back from work, they're always wondering whether there's a letter that's been pushed underneath, and wondering who it's from when there's one there on the floor. And you'll read it and you'll smile, and it's just a piece of home that's actually come into your cell. And knowing that there is people out there that actually do care for you. And yes, you've made the mistake by going to prison in the first place, and at risk of actually losing your loved ones for you making them decisions that you actually make whilst you're out in the community. But for us as parents to be inside prison and receiving letters from their children and visits from their children, it's so huge. It's so huge. And, it gives us a reason to carry on and be able to survive the prison system and not fall into the system and struggling with the mental health.
Can prisoners be moved anywhere in the country? The answer to that is yes, but we try to avoid doing that, and we try and keep men as local as we can to home for ease of visits and to maintain family contacts. We know just how important that is. Sometimes it'll be restricted on what type of prison is local to you, and some men might not be suitable to stay in that prison long term, but wherever possible, we try and keep people as close to their home area as we possibly can.
If I'm worried about them, who should I tell? You can talk to any of the officers that are in the prison at any time. That's entering the prison or leaving the prison. And if you don't get an opportunity to speak to them, or you choose you do not want to speak to them, when you come out into the visit centre, come and speak to us. Come and speak to a member of staff. You'll know who we are.
In the news, it says prisoners are locked in their cells all day. Is this true? Yes and no. So, it does say that prisoners are banged up for about 23 hours a day. Now, in some prisons, that is possible due to the fact of there's no work for people to come out of their cells and do. If you've got work, you won't be banged in your cell for 23 hours a day. You'll be out. You're probably out for 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours a day you'll be out of your cell. And you also have your association as well, which is at the end of the day, around about 5 o'clock, and you're out of your cell for another just under 2 hours. You're out of your cell. But prison works by behaviour. So within behaviour, it's then depending on what you actually get whilst you're inside. Now, you have 3 elements of behaviour. You have basic, standard, and enhanced. Enhanced prisoners are mainly out of their cell all day, and their cells are unlocked, especially if they're in a category C prison. Their cells will be unlocked. The landings will be locked, but their cells are unlocked. So they're free to walk around the landings all day until a complete bang up at the end of the night, where every single person is put within their cell. If you're on standard is your cells open in the times that the prison officers are working. So that will be the first morning roll call, lunch roll call, tea time roll call for the association, and then the bang up for the end of the evening. So then again, you're still getting time out of your cell. If you're on basic, now basic is down for bad behavior and causing absolute chaos in the prison system. Now, basic are only allowed out of their cell first thing in the morning just so they can go and get a shower. They're only allowed out of their cell to get their lunch and their tea. And from then, they're banged up for that rest of the period throughout that day until the next day. So basic prisoners are banged up for around about 23 hours a day, but other prisoners are usually allowed out of their cell at some elements of times throughout the day.
What happens if someone is beaten up? Well, firstly, we make sure that somebody from healthcare sees them to make sure they're okay. Then what happens is we interview the people that have been beaten up to find out what the reasons are behind it, what led to it, what can we do to help, and most importantly, what can we do to prevent it happening again and keeping people safe. We've got lots of trained prison officers that are there to support people that have been beaten up, but also deal very robustly with people that use violence to beat people up, because we take a very a very dim view of people that do that, because ultimately we want everybody in the prison to be safe at all times.
My final piece of advice to you all would be to keep talking, talk to your friends, talk to your family, give each other the space that you need, but also support each other. And remember, when you go to any visit centre, you can always speak to a member of staff. Don't be alone.
Always maintain contact with your loved ones in prisons, because it's so valuable for the men that are in here, because they've been removed from the community, they've been taken away from their loved ones, taken away from their home and sent to prison. And that can be a lonely, intimidating and often, worrying place for people to be. And family contact is one way of making sure that you've got something to focus on for when you're released. And it's really important for the men in prison to know that when they come out of prison, that those relationships are still there. They've still got really good relationships with their kids, to make sure that they've got a stable family to go to. And it won't always be easy for men in prison. Sometimes you just might need to listen to your dad and just hear what he's got to say and provide with him some support. Always provide them with encouragement too. And if they're not sure about what they want to do in prison, encourage them to perhaps get engaged in an activity they wouldn't ordinarily think about, learn new skills, keep themselves busy. But you play a vital role in making sure that men stay safe in prison, because it's a worrying time for them, and to know that they've got that stable family contact, who should never underestimate just how important that is for your loved ones in prison.
I think that any advice that I'd give to a young person that's had a family member actually go to prison is any questions that you might have, or any worries that you might have about what your mum or your dad might be coming up against whilst they're going inside, is don't bottle it up and ask the question, because there is no stupid question to ask. Because we do understand, we do see that there is a lot of stuff on TV and social media about what prison actually looks like. Always ask the questions. You will get the right answer, and within them answers that you'll get, it will make you feel so much more comfortable. And when you actually do manage to go and visit your parent while into the prison system in itself, you will then be able to ask your mum or your dad exactly what life is actually like in prison. And being in the visiting room, you'll actually be around people that are actually on a visit as well as other families and other prisoners, and you'll be able to see it for yourself. And you will actually see that, things aren't as bad as what people make out that they are through war stories and stuff. So make your own assumptions of what it is, and the only way to do that is ask the questions and don't sit on it.